All right. Well, welcome to our guest. Thank you for joining us here on this session of the WellWaveNOW group. So what the WellWaveNOW is, it's a group of us who consider ourselves experts in certain fields and certain parts of the health and wellness, but we'd like to kind of share our thoughts and provide advice and advice that can be acted upon with some research to various individuals out there, and also get questions from people. And that's what Dabi said that. And I know Dabi, we met a while back, and I know how focused she is on health and wellness and things of that nature. So it's always good to get great questions from people like that to drive our knowledge and to respond and to sometimes learn from the audience as well as we go through this. And so the three of us who do this I'll start with Breck Rice. Breck is the chairman of Bren Health and is an innovator in community wellness and bringing different models of delivery of that wellness to underserved areas and advancing the cause out there with very leading edge care, even to remote areas of the country. And then we've got Dr. Bob Levine. Bob is a brain researcher as well as an expert in the Bob, I'm going to get this one right for you this time, because I'm not going to say opioid. I'm going to say drug-free elimination of pain.
Yeah, great.
And so he's spoken on that on a number of conferences, worldwide speaker on it, but also appeared on TV on it, and also served as the head of the Henry Ford Center for Health for integrated wellness as part of that. What I do is I am Tim Daniels. I'm a wellness plan manager, and I won't belabor what that is for you. I'll give you a couple of analogies. What a financial manager does for your finances is what I look to do for your health. You can also think of me as a general contractor people hire to help them manage their wealth, manage their health, and get them through that process on that. And so I bring to that a background from home care agency as an athlete, as an exposure to Chinese martial arts, as well as Chinese medicine through that, as well as having been a health coach. So a multidiscipline comes into play in delivering that for people. So that's the three of us. And today what we want to talk to you about is effective movement routines. And so with that, and as we discuss this topic a little bit, I want to turn to Breck here. Breck had some good thoughts on what really is setting the stage for that, and really what's the right perspective to take a look at that equipment movement. A little more setup on that. We'll talk to effective movement for stress, effective movements for dysfunction, to prevent dysfunction and other things. But there's a higher level that Breck really brought to our attention that I think deserves sharing a little bit, Breck.
Yeah, it's before we get into the actual mechanics of appropriate movement and making sure that we're not causing more damage than good in just our daily activity, I thought that it might be good to start your day with some daily stretching routines. So I know as I've gotten older, and I've noticed, ankles may not be ready to get running first thing in the morning, and so do some actual rotations of getting those ankles going. Yeah, doing the bands, different things like that. And so I've actually identified some good stretches, specifically focusing on maybe 50 and older. So if you're much younger than me, your body's probably not needing to warm up first thing in the morning like mine does now. But I'll put those in the chat for the group here. There's just some good ideas on getting into a morning stretching routine. And then the other idea too was there's starting to be more and more focus, because so many of us are sitting at desks so long, sitting on these Zoom meetings, that there's actually some activities that you can do while sitting at your desk. And so it's getting more popular to actually do desk yoga and some desk exercises. And so I'll put some ideas of some links where you can go and learn more about desk yoga. There's some pretty fun YouTube channels about it. So,
and as Breck puts that into the chat, I would all neglected to mention too, but I'll remind us and our audience here and participants, if you have questions, we're going to spend about another another 22 minutes or so on this. But if you have questions, put those in the chat, please. We'll try to address them the latter half of that 22 minutes. But also we stick around post that to answer any questions, to have kind of an open dialogue with people as well. So we're planning on a half hour, but last week we stayed I think 65 to 70 minutes on with people just to make sure they got their questions answered and to go through things. So happy to do that with you if you so choose to and need to, and or just want to with that. Some of the things you touched on, Breck, as I think about it, is really daily activities and working. I guess this is kind of becoming a common theme with us as we talk about stress and as we talk about how do you eliminating chronic pain, is also how do you work these things into your daily routine. It's got to be part of your being, as heard Bob talk a little bit about. One of the things you talked about there was sitting, movement as you sit. But that also popped into my mind. One of the things that Dr. Bob was always focused on, and part is even when you're moving properly, or even if you're sitting there, you've got to sit properly. And for those of you who hadn't gotten on when I mentioned that, I go back and take a look at our replays, and I'll put in where you can get our replays at as well. And I find myself getting kind of loose in the seat and relaxing and slumping over this way or that way. But I've always noticed that Dr. Bob is sitting asserting, just like he's doing right now, just in that perfect posture that he's got there. So Bob, why is that? And leading into why is it you do it that way? What's the importance of it?
Well, thank you, Tim. Great to be here. I would say it's from an efficiency standpoint, and also keeping myself from migrating toward more pain than I might be in, but I'm not in any pain right now, or just migrating to pain. So in other words, I'll just give you a quick example. In sitting, a lot of people are looking down at their computers or looking down at their keyboard, or as Breck said, he's getting close to his microphone, and you can see my head is really out there right now. And that's a problem because these muscles in the front of the neck get shorter, they contract. The ones in the back get longer. And then when somebody picks their head up as they get older, and you've seen this all the time, somebody's in that difficult position where the head is forward. I guarantee you, a forward head posture, all you got to do is have somebody take a picture of you from the side. And if your ear canal is not over your shoulders, if it's forward of your shoulders by even an inch or an inch and a half or two, you're definitely going to have some tension in the back of your shoulders, because these muscles have to hold your head up. If they didn't hold your head up, your head would fall down. So sitting properly is really important with the head over the shoulders. And I guarantee you that you see it all the time in old age homes and assisted living facilities. The people who have the forward head postures, they're on walkers because they can barely keep their head up, right? And it happens slowly over time. It starts with young kids. We didn't, when some of us, most of us are old enough to know that we didn't have like all these cellular phones and everything to look at to do all the communication with. But now with that going on, all of us, everybody, we're all looking down at our devices, keyboards and whatever. So ergonomics is really important. Having the monitor up in front of you at the right height, having your making sure your arms aren't out in front of you like this. I like to use a trackball instead of a mouse, because a mouse is moving the shoulder all around and causing muscle tension in the shoulder to be there all the time. And then of course we don't mouse with both hands, we mouse with one hand normally. So that's just a little bit about the sitting. And one last thing about sitting, if you're sitting for a long period of time, it's really important, I would say, every half hour to stand up, unlock your pelvis, take a 20-step walk to and from someplace, whatever it is, and then sit back down again, because it's really important to keep your pelvis loose and flexible.
Yeah. So along those lines, Bob, as I know you were a collegiate football player, as a collegiate wrestler. Breck is just as an athlete in life, and makes things happen that way. And so I've got a lot of injuries that prop up and make my body want to do certain things. And as arthritis, I think you said, and for example, I can feel my spine trying and wanting to shift a certain way. And I'm coming to a question for you on this one. But I fight that misalignment, because I know that it's misalignment, and I see these people who are walking now, and their hip goes this way and their shoulders that way. At some point, that felt good to them to do that. So the question is, we could have any of these folks and you offer up like a free consultation with yourself when they talk through things. Yet in addition to that, how can people what find out the right body mechanics that you talk about? What's some things that they can do to research and understand that?
Really challenging because not very many people even know how to teach that stuff, and not many people know, it's just not that available. So I counsel people on proper movement. This is one of many of the modalities I use in the mind body spirit connection, but movement is so important. So you have to deal with the whole person. So I'll put my information in the chat if somebody wants to chat more about proper movement, walking, sitting and standing, bending and reaching, automatic patterns of movement. I'd be happy to meet and talk about that because it's really vital in the long run. I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's a very important component of helping a person achieve optimal health in the long run. And I don't know. I watched the guy named Paul St. John. He filmed a video of people walking on the beach, and he critiqued everybody. And that was like 25 years ago. That changed my life forever. Now I watch everybody walk because I can't help it. I mean, and I see all the dysfunction. I would say that 95 out of 100 people are walking improperly and in a way that doesn't serve them in the long run. So it's really helpful to get, because the average person takes between 30,000 and 50,000 repetitive movements every day. I mean, can you imagine that? And so that's why it's hard to get one out of pain if they're walking or having all these different movement patterns. They're doing them inappropriately. So getting proper movement is what's needed.
Right. Now, as I work with, and I work with a lot of retired professional athletes, and a number of them from impact sports that will come along with a lot of chronic pain and things of that nature. And so I hear you talk about the repetitive movements and they're in pain, and they are, and a lot of people are. But also, what I try to focus on with them, doing it correctly in the correct movement, is that another thing that's almost opposite from the intuition is if you're in that chronic pain, you need to move, and you need to move more. You need to do it correctly in that chronic joint, especially chronic joint pain or otherwise. One, because exercise actually kicks off things. It helps with inflammation in the body, bringing down things. Two, it triggers moisturization in the joints. Three, your body is a nice chemical foundry, and some of those exercises and movements, even stretching, as well as even Tai Chi and breathing, kick off endorphins in the body that will bring the pain down naturally. And four, lastly, last thing that I'll add as well as that is you're building muscles, and muscles are shock absorbers. If I've lost some cartilage, it's built up muscle. What the personal trainer at Stanford took me through on that, as I had that cartilage operation, is you really need to remodel the muscles around your knee. That will help you compensate for that a little bit, and help you stabilize, keep more stabilization in it. It will also help you, then with that stabilization, and will also help you absorb the shocks better. So that movement, continuing to move when one has chronic pain in the joints, I find essential and key. But as you say, Bob, the movement's got to be right, and it's got to be. And I'd also, as Brett talked about, by age and things of that nature, it's got to be prudent, because unprudent, incorrect movement can lead to that dysfunction that you're always talking about, Paul.
Dr. Bob, I've got a question for you. You see advertisements all the time on those braces that roll the shoulders back and kind of give people better posture. What is your thought on those?
I mean, they're not bad, but the thing is, you wear those things, they can help balance somebody out. The trick is, how do we do that normally? How do we get our body to do that normally rather than relying on a crutch? And so that's why I teach a technique called effective muscle release. Also, to address your point, Tim, about building the muscles up, it's also really important to get those muscles, however strong they are, to relax and be able to release, to create more joint space, for instance, in the spine. When there's reduced joint space, bulging disc, that's because the muscles around the vertebrae are in excess contraction. So I have a whole series of movement routines that I call effective muscle release. And also to counteract the repetitive movements of daily living, I have a whole series of neuromuscular movement re-education routines. that are designed to allow the muscles to be able to relax and release, let go, so they're not in contraction all the time. Because the stress reactions, as we know, create muscles that are in contraction a lot of the time, and that burns energy inappropriately. It can create postural misalignments of different types, rotations, tilts, projections like the head, and the so it's really important to be able to have the body's musculature be relaxed and released, so that when we need the muscles to be at full performance, maximum performance, we can turn it on, instead of having the muscle contraction be at like on a 0 to 10 scale at a 4 and being fatigued and only go to 6 or 7. We want to have the muscle be at a 1 or a 2 to go to 8 or 9, like that. That's what we want from these muscles. So anybody who has knee problems and spinal issues and hip issues, the effective muscle release routines are phenomenal for creating more joint space and allowing the joint to restructure itself.
Now, Brooke, you mentioned some stretching that you do and that can help with that, release. But as Dr. Bob was talking about tension and muscle contraction, I guess, Brooke, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now. I've never seen a more relaxed person in my life. Now, maybe that's just your mental attitude, but what else do you do from a routine standpoint that keeps you that relaxed and that's stress free? I've seen stress impact you once or twice when some big clients come in and you've got to handle those. But aside from that, but you kind of handle that well and alleviate that. And like I said, you're very, very relaxed in general. So how does movement play a role in that for you if it does?
Yeah, for me, it's it's having those short breaks and intervals, right? And so it's doing some activity in between, taking a conference call that doesn't have to be on video on Zoom, and taking it in a walk around the neighborhood. I've got a really nice green space right behind our home. The whole reason why we bought this house is we didn't have neighbors right directly behind us, not because I'm antisocial, but it had green space back there. It has a nice park, so we do a lot of park games and set up volleyball net and everything back there. But yeah, so if I can be just on a conference call like we used to do back in the olden days and just be on the phone, I'll do that and take a walk around. And first, when everybody started getting the wearable devices like the Apple Watch, and it would remind you to stand, it's time to stand up. I thought that was kind of funny, right? It's kind of silly that a piece of electronic was telling me that it was time to stand up. That's actually really good advice, right?
Right.
To have those intervals. And we have someone that we has been on this interactive podcast with us before, that's really into brain research and does a lot of these Zoom meetings. He'll actually show up to a Zoom meeting because he needed to get up and walk around before he got onto the next meeting.
Right. And so love that. And as you mentioned, that helps with your stress and relaxation, but also with that popped to mind. So unfortunately, I can't claim credit for this phrase. Learned it from a guy named Dr. Wayne Scott Anderson, who actually people may have heard of. What's it, Metafast and things of that nature.
Take shape for life, right?
It was Metafast, and on the medical side, Take Shape for Life. Now it's called something like OptiV or something like that. But also in addition to that, so the Metafast is a okay way of losing weight very quickly. But often people don't realize that he also developed a thing called living a longer, healthier life, and the habits of health was really meant to say, after you get off this food, how do you stay that way? And part of what he built into that is what he calls something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. How do you burn, how do you burn the calories and turn your body more into a calorie thing? And part of that, with things you talk about, like for stress, he also talks about how you need to turn your body into that daily movement that way. Like you said, stand instead of sit. If you can take a phone call, walk around with it. Switch, for example. And what does he mean by what's meant by switch? That's where there are still things we do in an automated fashion, like washing dishes, that why don't you take 2 or 3 nights a week and wash the dishes by hand and burn some calories? Gets back to your sitting posture, Bob. That if you sit correctly, the muscles are engaged, you're burning more there, but you're also creating more energy because you're doing things correctly. So, and this like you talked about, the strolling, it's a work strolling into your life. As part of that strolling as well, and when you go to the grocery store, park a little bit farther away from the door so you're getting a little more walking in there. Take some stairs if you can. So it's that other thing, back of the thing that we harp on almost everything as I reflect that we talk about, is that you got to find a way to build these things into your daily life and daily routine, because if it's not a routine, you're not going to succeed. And a routine is a way of is your way of being. So it's got to be part of your way of being in there.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you know, a good example of, you know, parking a little further away and you know, working in a downtown office and having to park in a garage and then, you know, walk just to even get to the elevator bank would take the stairs if you could. And I haven't been in buildings where it was only a couple of flights of stairs, and so that was actually kind of fun for me to take those stairs. But you know, then getting into a building where you literally the only way you can get up to your floor is in the elevator, I kind of miss some of those extra curricular activities getting to and from the office. Now officing at home, probably good 80 to 90% of the time now, ever since, you know, the pandemic. I purposely my original office was downstairs, but there was um, there was a room upstairs that I could use because now I'm upstairs from the kitchen, right? So
Mhm.
so I have to take the stairs up and down if I want to grab a snack or make lunch. I've got that flight of stairs that I do every day, and it's pretty interesting to track that if you are anywhere around stairs, is to see how many stairs you take, you know, per day.
Right. One quick comment to that, Bob, for because what I think if I remember correctly, the translation of stairs to steps is one flight of steps actually equals 100 steps. And so you're actually getting a lot in because of the incline and the things and the exertion you're having going up on that.
Absolutely.
Bob?
I'd like to give everybody some practical tips in movement that I think will help you dramatically. So in terms of tips for walking, I teach a 7-step walking process. I'd like to give you 2 of the tips that I teach. One is to make sure you're looking up and looking off into the distance, because people who look down, maybe they think they're going to trip over something. I'm not sure why everybody's looking down all the time. Maybe they want to see how they're looking. I don't know. But in any case, really looking up is really important. So when you're outside and there's potential problems with, you know, curbs and things, you look down and scan for maybe out to 100 feet, 200 feet, and then you can walk looking up. And so what that does is it keeps your head closer to the ideal position and doesn't let the muscles keep reinforcing that forward head posture. The second thing is arm swing. So natural arm swing is really important. So because the shoulders, you want the shoulders to rotate, and then when the arms are dangling, they're not burning energy. It takes more energy to keep your arms locked at your side, which a lot of people do. That their spinal column doesn't rotate at all. The shoulders are fixed, and they just walk with the spinal column going like this. And when the shoulders are rotating and the hips are rotating, the spinal column is rotating, and that's really functionally fantastic for the spinal column. So the 2 things to remember are look long, scan, and then look long. Use your peripheral vision to watch for alligators and boulders and stuff like that. Down in Florida, we have alligators, so I have to watch out for them. And then let your arms dangle by your side, swing naturally. The arms go exactly where they belong. Let your shoulders swing a little bit. Those 2 things are very important. They can help a lot. And if you want to know more, you can get a hold of me and I can tell you some more tips about that. The second tip is when you sit and stand, or any time that you're bending at the waist. Okay, this would be the front of your body. If you're bending at the waist like this, most people do not contract their abdominal muscles whatsoever. So you should test yourself. You can just like put a pen on the floor and bend over to pick up the pen, then take your other hand and push into your abdominal compartment. And what you're likely to find is your abdominal muscles are not contracted. That means your back is doing all the work. Every time you bend over, the back is doing all the work. So when the stomach muscles are contracted also, the back at least knows it's got support. It's got a partner in the action. Right? The reciprocal muscles in the front to the back are working too. And so you want to keep, as soon as you initiate a bend at the waist, contract the abdominal compartment. Then also notice if you're breathing when you bend over and pick up the pen. Most people who bend over to pick something up or reach for something hold their breath. And holding the breath is a way of not helping yourself. It can actually cause an injury if you hold your breath at certain times when you're in motion. So always have your breath going when you're in motion. Whatever that noise is. So anyway, so those are my tips about sitting, standing, and bending at the waist, and also walking.
All right. Okay. So I think we've touched upon that effective movement to maintain function. Although Bob, there's a couple things I suggest we get into with you as well before I summarize or move on with that, because like you've talked about even how people walk incorrectly, they'll find their toes gripping and that lead to certain things. So I think spend a little bit more time on what you want to articulate on the certain high commonality or very common dysfunctional movements you see, what that leads to, so that people really can get into their mind. I would say a couple of things always help people in my estimation as I work with my clients. I find for some it's knowledge helps them, and it's a little bit of fear for initial motivation. I always say fear might be good for initial motivation. I don't like it for long term because I think it just wears down people. It destroys them. And I think people will stay longer with pleasure than they will, say motivated longer with pleasure than they will with pain. But having an understanding still of, if not the pain, the exposures and the risks for risk management is good. So I'd like you to spend a little more time on that, the risk of dysfunctional movement, and then a little more on your tips on how to stay away from it.
So thanks, Tim. That what you're talking about is why I work so much with future visioning as part of the mind-body component of what we do. Future visioning for finding out what is proper movement, having proper movement, using proper movement, and keeping ourselves and our body structure vital, way beyond 100 years old if that's what we choose. And so future visioning is really important. Regarding what some of the things you're talking about, a very common dysfunction is when people are standing not up straight, but they're leaning slightly forward. So if you can test yourselves this way, you can stand up the way you normally stand. And then all you do is you leave the ball of your foot on the ground and you raise your toes up. That's it. And if your body swings back a little bit, you know that you are leaning forward a little bit and that you're causing your toes to grip. And then if you've ever seen somebody 80 years old with dysfunctional toes, they're all over the place, they're crossing, they're narrowing because of all the gripping, they're hammer toes. There's all kinds of things that happen in the feet. So you can help you. So I always advise people when I'm coaching them on movement, when they come to a stop, you're walking, and you come to a stop, and then what you do is you simply pick up your toes and see if you go backwards. And if you go backwards, it's fine. Just pick your toes up, get yourself aligned this way, and then you're ready to stand in a functional way without causing problems with your toes and your feet. There's a lot more to all of this, but I think we're getting close to the end here, so I'll just stop there. But there's a lot of different things I can tell you about how to keep yourself ready forever, ready for the rest of your life. I put my information in the chat. If you want to get a hold of me, that'd be fine. I'd love to speak with you.
Breck, you're nodding your head there. Comments or thoughts?
No, just we've spent a lot of time on proper mechanics of moving, but I think also maybe ought to just at least touch on that some high intensity intervals training is also good, because you also need the cardio, right? And so being involved in in some kind of a sport. I know it's really popular now, the pickleball. The first time I saw tennis courts getting converted into pickleball courts, I was like, what is this pickleball? I've never even heard of this before. And it's taken off, and it's something that isn't just for, the younger generation. This is something that is really quite, a fun sport for someone that is starting to not be as mobile, because you do have quick intervals, but then you also have plenty of rest time too, as well, in between. So, and it's hard for some people to to think about doing something that's going to have quick intervals or be aerobic as being fun. And so the other, idea would be, join a sports team or a league or something like that, where you're around other friends and you're doing something that's active together.
Right. And I live across the park where there's still people of some older folks of Italian descent. They go out there and play bocce ball. And that bending that ball, tossing that ball, that's good. That is good. Exercise is good in routine. And I think that's also back to your part about having fun. That plays back in the philosophy I teach with my clients is, like I said, initially pain can be a motivator, but you got to find the pleasure. And I think also it's also although like to reiterate to folks is that your why is not enough. So I always encourage people, yes, find your why, understand your why, but you hear too much about, why, what's your why on this? I think there's two other components that are as important, if not more important. It's one, it's the belief, it's that belief that it can happen, that Bob, that comes with that visioning that you talk about. And so have the belief, and then the second part is how do you build that belief? And that belief can come from the visioning Bob talks about. It can come from, faith cometh by hearing. It doesn't have to be hearing it from Tim, Breck, or Bob. You can hear it from yourself. And I know Bob does this as he talks about, but he has people, has recordings for them they listen to. I have people record their own voice because that very plays into them and talk about what that state is that you want. What is that purpose? And it's the feeling behind it. And it's to really, from that why, you have to also think about what that's going to mean to you when it happens, so you can put some feeling behind it, because it's the why and it's the feeling and then the plan that really then people begin to execute with it.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to bring up about the pain signal, because the pain signal is so important, and how it relates to movement is as follows. The pain, when people are in pain, they tend to want to move away from the pain, and it creates all kinds of dysfunctional compensations with regard to movement. So I just want all of you to remember that it's really important to move towards the discomfort and the pain, work at the edge of the pain. What your mind is doing when you do that is your mind is telling the brain, hey brain, we got to get this situation straight. More blood flow, more energy to the area so we can resolve this condition. So just remember, moving away from pain is dysfunctional. It doesn't work from a point of view of movement, and future dysfunctional movement patterns can come out.
And ignoring it is dysfunctional too, right? It's like the smoke detector going off in your house. You're not just going to ignore it and say, okay, yeah, well, it'll go away eventually. No, that's the same as pain. Pain is that smoke detector. It's the warning, letting you know, hey, there's an issue here you got to deal with.
I was trying to catch for Bob. I guess he was just waving goodbye there, but of course, about trying to catch him. But on that point, to your point, Bob, I was very fortunate to study with martial arts with two folks from mainland China with a long history, what they call Kung Fu lineage. Dr. Peter Kim Ho Chu, who was unfortunately since passed, but also his son, Garrett G. And that line, one of their relatives was one of the folks who taught the hand-to-hand combat for the Chinese army that went over to Taiwan. But to your point, as they went into that, and as that part of that philosophy, it was always taught, don't run from that pain. Put your mind, to your point, Bob, put your mind into that pain. That helps your body address it, helps you focus on it, helps you work on it and pay attention to it. And you actually gets into the root cause of it versus that. And actually going into the pain versus going away from it actually can cause it to, the body goes to work on reducing it oftentimes on that.
I want to remind everybody to save the chat, by the way, which is, if you don't know how to do that, speak up, but it's up the upper right hand corner, 3 horizontal dots. You can click on those and click save, and then you've got all the chat information on your computer.
Okay, I think we've kind of done our half hour here and a little bit more. So if anyone with us has any questions comments, we love comments about what you heard. 2, we love suggestions on topics. We come up with our own topics based upon our experience and sort of what we feel what people have been working with, but love to hear from you on what you'd like to hear us talk about. Questions, comments, any of those. Diane, you took that mute off. You ready to go?
I am. I am. I was recently told that the little jumping
Trampoline?
bouncy trampoline that, yes, thank you, the miniatures that, you know, have a handle on them and you can hold on to it, that even if you're in chronic pain and you can't even lift your whole foot off of it, that just tiny little bounces like that are really incredibly valuable. And I wonder if you could explain the why behind that, if it's in fact a true statement, and what it is that happens. They were talking about some something opening up more for oxygen. You know, maybe you could just explain that why that, if it is true.
I can jump on that. So first of all, that movement is quite valuable, even if you're just going up and down a little bit, because it's moving. Everything in your body is getting moved up, down, compressing, decompressing, compressing, decompressing. So that little itty bitty bit is quite important. And excuse me. So I
Will
love.
it build on itself? I wonder, does it build on itself by doing that?
Well, I mean, that's if I had a problem lifting my foot up off the trampoline, that would not be my preferred way to try and build on itself. I would be going after what's happening here. But if I'm on the trampoline, also holding on to the bar, I would want to do, for instance, toe raises, right? Like this, and then heel raises. I want to get full ankle mobility. So to whatever extent you can do that, even if you can just pick your toes up a little bit, that's plenty. Every time, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, maybe 5 or 10 times with the ball of your foot and toes, 5 or 10 times in the heel, even if it's only a little bit, right? Just don't fatigue yourself, but and don't strain. You want to be comfortable. And I always recommend a pause, like when you lift up and pause at the top just for just a moment, and then at the bottom you pause at the bottom, because you want to give the muscles a chance to let go. If you just keep doing this and this and this, the muscles are contracted the whole time. It doesn't give the muscles a chance to let go, and that's what muscles really need. Because in all of us, we've trained our muscles to either consciously or subconsciously, they're in contraction. You know, they're tightening, they're tight. So we want to give them a chance. So I always any kind of movement that people do, whether it's working out big time with weights or whether it's bands or whatever it is, allow for pauses when we get back down, so the muscles can just let go for a moment and start again.
Yeah, it's been a while ago, but I recall a study that talked about how that up and down movement of a trampoline helps with cell division and vasomotion and some of the things that I know Tim is an expert on with PEMF.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so
Okay.
I'm sorry, Diane, do you have, would you say there for a second, Diane?
Oh, I just said, okay, that sounds great. And when you said cell division, that kind of triggered, because I'm all about cellular health, right? So I'm wondering what they were talking about, the valve opening up. Is there anything you're thinking of, or did I get it wrong?
Well, I mean, typically, Tim, you got something? I was going to jump.
No, go right ahead, Bob.
So typically, they're probably talking about the valves that are in the veins that return the blood to the heart. So when you're bouncing up and down, the blood flows, you know, making a move in the veins, and the valves can actually function. The reason why those kinds of movements are so great, and all movement is great, is because it creates distinctions for the mind to dictate to the brain what the brain should be working on for the mind. So the mind is the big director, and the brain is the electrochemical machinery that gets the job done. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you. That makes sense.
So are you doing that trampoline right now, Diane?
No, I have people that are in chronic pain that I was going to suggest it to, and I didn't want to do that irresponsibly.
Well, for me, a couple of things as I look at it, is when I like for myself and a lot of people I work with have had damaged knees. I had my first knee operation when I was 17. I competed on that for a number of years after. I had my second one when I was 22. And over the years before I learned some of the things that I knew, I did certain things to those knees that I would avoid, and now osteoarthritis has set in, and I managed that like with. I manage and eliminate my pain on that also without drugs, Bob. But I use PEMF on that, pulse electromagnetic field therapy. But tying it back to what you said, Diane. So I'm very cautious on that jumping. One, by one, understanding what is the physical structure of that person and their joints and what's there and what's not there. Also, age. As I work with the retired professional athletes, and I talk to them about PEMF and talk to them about, hey, this is a wonderful thing to help you train harder, longer, just like your younger days. Some of them would come back to me and say, well, Tim, I'm missing my meniscus cartilage. Tim, I've had a laminectomy. So what is the right exercise for me given that? But also, saying, look, some of them still go at 55, still going in the gym and doing the same routines they were doing when they were 30 or 22. You've got to adjust that exercise by age because of unstoppable biological changes that happen with it. And related to this, in the jumping, collagen, for example. Collagen production goes down the body. Collagen is the cushioning of the joints. So while that up and down movement, Bob talked to the up and down movement helping. The up and down movement helps in a lot of ways. I'm not necessarily a fan of jumping up and down for everyone. That bending up and down can do it. The raising can do it. You can get the benefits in other ways. So I think it's got to be, the person himself has to be, him or herself has to be understood. And what you do to get those benefits should be customized to that individual, and then also customized by age for them as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Diane, I sent you a note in the chat, so if you want to save the chat, you'll get the note.
Thank you. And then the second question I would have is there is a little machine that you just stand on and it vibrates.
A vibration plate.
And okay, and people are raving about this. It looks too simple for me.
Well,
what am I missing?
I don't know what Tim's going to say, but I love vibration plates. I think they're fabulous.
Okay, tell me why, and then Tim, tell me why you don't love them.
Well,
Why do you love vibration plates,
there's
Bob?
different kinds of vibration plates. The kind that are just static and vibrating, not so much for me. But there's kinds that are 3D and 4D, and they're moving around. And to me, from helping people with balance and helping people, just get their muscles moving in a new way. I love those things. I think it's a essential. I have one, and I think it's an essential part.
I think, and I'm sorry, and I guess the point with Diana as to whether I like them or not, Bob, I can't say I've ever dived into them. I'm also, although I may not look at it and sound like you never completely get away of your frame of reference where you grew up from. And I grew up in central Nebraska, very, very conservative stuff. You wouldn't find the cowboys and the cattle ranchers or me standing on little vibrating plates type of thing. So that's a bias. And
you wouldn't have found me standing on it when I was 15, 18, 20.
But
phase of life,
Gotcha. But to your point, when they move and things like that, I do have a balance board. And so for that, for stabilization and keeping my body, that's great. So to me, it gets back again to Diane, when you say people are raving about it, what are they raving about it for? If someone was raving about it, like Dr. Bob did to me in terms of it's moving and helps with the stabilization and things of that nature, I'd say, wow. If somebody's saying, hey, this vibration is going to improve my blood flow, which is very key, and it's going to improve it at the microvessel level, like some things does with the very key, or I'd say that vibration in and of itself that's going to strengthen my muscles and improve things. I'm a little skeptical, so it depends on what they're trying to get out of it.
Tim, I use vibrational input all the time when I'm treating people. I have a practice, as you guys know, over the internet, where I treat people over the internet. But when I'm one-on-one in South Florida with somebody, or I fly out to see somebody, I use a lot of vibration when I'm doing hands-on work, because it's just so important to wake up tissue and to bring attention to tissue in a different kind of way. So I just wanted to put that in.
Okay, you can say E-stems vibration. That certainly helps it. So, so Bob, I didn't rule it out in totality. I said, what are you using it for? What are you trying to accomplish with it? And so, E-stems vibration, frequency, the PEMF I talked about. What that is vibration activation at a cellular level and even below cellular level to kick things off. So yes, but it's what form, what's the delivery mechanism, and what are you trying to accomplish with it? So I'm just skeptical does not necessarily mean cynical, Bob. It means that I want to evaluate it for what it is.
Well, I think that's smart. Anybody should do that. That's
Yeah.
smart.
I was just going to tell my esteemed co-hosts here that they just need to hang out more with my grandkids. That'll help with your stability and a lot.
That's good.
Yeah. So just have more grandkids in your life.
No, they told me it was a wonderful weight loss machine, and I just thought that was kind of like too good to be true.
Yeah,
Well, you know what? If it works for them, what the heck? I mean, different things.
Well, fair, yeah.
Yeah,
But-
so I guess back to I've battled weight off and on, Diane, since I was 12 years old and hit puberty. And I was a 126-pound collegiate wrestler, and at one point got up to 260 pounds, so more than double, and had to get big down from that. So I can't, well, and I've worked with a lot of people on weight management. That gets back to that non-exercise activity thermogenesis we were talking about, as well as things of that nature. So, you know, and I don't know everything. I'll readily acknowledge that. But, you know, weight loss, and unless you're, you know, but got a very good business person on, Bernard Robinson, he's being quiet today. He's also a former professional basketball player, but that's only 10% of what Bernard is. But I take that, unless you're a professional basketball player, unless you're, what's his name, Michael Phelps, burning 10,000 calories today when he was training for the swimming. Weight loss and weight management, 90% of that is food. And it's what's your diet, what's your intake, how you're managing that. And to just say I'm going to vibrate my weight away, that I'm cynical on, Diane.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
it really depends. I mean, anybody who loses a bunch of weight and they say it was because of this one thing, no, it can't be. It's got to be a whole series of things that
Right.
were happening.
Right.
So I agree. I actually agree with you.
We only have about 10 minutes left here, and want to make sure we get to Bernard's questions. He's got a two-part question.
Bernard's Kristen, okay. So he wasn't being quiet. He was putting it in the chat. What's the question, Breck, that you see there?
He's just
First of all, I once again enjoy this session. You all do an excellent job, and it's very informative. I do want to make a comment on those vibrational stability boards. It got introduced to me when I was in the NBA, and I have to admit, I have to agree with Dr. Levine. Once paired with a trainer, it is so much more. For us, we would go and use it in the mornings, and that would definitely wake up our muscles and help us with stability, movement, strength, especially paired with a physical trainer where he's having you bend in certain directions. Once you step off that board, you will notice your stability and your movements and all these things change. Extremely important when you're going out there to get ready to go on a court or somewhere, maybe an exercise or running or something like that, and you want to hit the ground running. And if you do focus on those stability boards for multiple times during a week, you definitely will tighten up certain areas. Like that board is no joke, but you can't be on there for 5 minutes and think you're going to get something out of it. But my question was, going back to the topic that you all had today, you know, statistically speaking, when do you all think, or what age do you all think is the best time to really incorporate these movements and the importance of making sure these movements are implemented in a person's daily activity in their lives? Like, what is those ages that you think are important?
Yeah. Well, personally, I teach young kids to walk properly because it starts in the youth. I mean, whatever's going on with us now started decades ago for us people who are a little bit on the older side. We're not teenagers anymore. So the looking up when they walk instead of looking down, there's a lot of self-esteem issues in looking down too that have to be dealt with in terms of the mind, body, spirit connection. But so proper walking is vital. Bending over, bending at the waist, contracting the abdominal muscles. Learning how to do this stuff when you're younger, it's like a no-brainer for when you get older. You don't even have to focus on it. It becomes really automatic. So I think it's really important for younger people to know about these things. The problem with the experience I've had with a lot of younger people, and myself included, is like, I don't need any help. I got it covered. I'm 18, 19, 20, 22. 23, and I you know, I'm immortal at this point in time. It wasn't until I was 23 that I started noticing changes. I went, wow, man, this is not forever, is it? You know, but back in those days, it was like the idea that I could be contributed to as an athlete was not that great. I wasn't that open to everything, except for my direct coaches. But so Bernard, that's my answers. Should start early, Bernard.
And
I'd love to get the opinion from everybody.
Breck, you got a thought?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, again, Dr. Bob does a great job focusing on mechanics. Just look at the activity of you know, youth. I made the joke about, you know, you just need a couple of grandkids hanging on you and wrestling with you to keep active and you know, moving. But you see that as how active kids are when they are younger, and then how that tapers off is kind of a good indicator, right? That we need to stay like little children. We need to be curious and active, just like little kids all the time, even as adults.
Right.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Yep. And see, for me, if I take a look at the area on this, we talk about movement for dysfunction, movement for stress, movement for weight management, and probably a couple other areas on that. To me, therefore, you know, like I said, I started, if it hadn't been for one incident that I talked about last week and then led me into wrestling, I'd have been severely obese for a large part of my life because it's age 12 when I hit that puberty. So where am I going with this? Because those things start early in life, I think these habits, these effective movement habits, working into your daily life, finding fun activities, doing it for stress relief, preventing dysfunction, those should be a curriculum that starts with people in grade school. Just like, you know, you have a little gym that, you know, you take gym. Well, teaching effective movement ought to be part of what's taught in gym at an early age. And before I stop and go back, a very see, Bernard came on, and if I had said something a certain way, I'd have been trapped and looked terrible. But remember, a very wise man told me, with my father, Sergeant Major T.A. Daniels, 30 career military guy. He says, Tim, only fools are 100% positive, especially when they're not completely informed about what they know about. So on those boards, I said, depends upon what they're used for, what you're trying to achieve on that. So
Yes, you did.
there you go.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
I did have a second part to what you all were talking about, you know, so I guess the question that I have in my head, and this could be really two different topics, but I'd love to hear you all experts' opinion. When we talk about movement, do we relate that to activity, just being active, or do we relate that to the knowledge? Which one do you all think is more important? Is it the knowledge of understanding how to move so that way it can accompany you throughout your years? Or is it just about being active and focusing on?
Great question, Bernard. I mean, to me, without the knowledge of how to move correctly, the game is over. It's just going to not turn out too well in the end. So you got to have the knowledge first and foremost. Then you have to be willing to implement it. And so some people I've taught the knowledge to, not that many, but some people I've taught the knowledge to, and they haven't been willing to implement it. So I don't know. They think they're fine the way they are, and you know they're okay even though they've got pain. And I can get them out of pain without them doing all the movements properly, but it makes it more challenging. So I think it's a great question. Knowledge first, movement second. They're both required. They're both essential.
Which one do you think is more important? Because just listening to that comment you made, Brett, about, you know, playing with your grandkids, that's activity.
Yeah.
You know, but are you getting the proper things out of, you know, so is activity better than knowledge, or should the two be combined together? And that's related. Is that called perfect? Having the two, knowledge and activity, combined together, or is activity just better? Or is knowledge and understanding better?
Yeah, let me address that, because that is such a good deep question, and thank you, Bernard, for that. I'm going to take Tim's side right now, because he usually is the one that argues with Dr. Bob. So I'm going to go be on the other side of Dr. Bob on this. You got to start with the desire first, and if you're not getting up and getting moving, I mean, go back and think about the example I gave earlier about, you know, being curious as a child and just being moving and going. I look at my grandson, shoot a basketball, and there is no technique there whatsoever, but he's having fun doing it. He's
Yeah.
active and he's doing it. Well, as he gets a little older, he's 5. As he gets a little older, we can help with some of the, technique behind actually shooting the ball. But he's out there having a blast, and when he makes a basket, there's no more excited kid you'll ever see. And so I think it starts with the desire that then creates movement that then you
Yeah.
can now coach. But if
I
you don't have that
agree.
desire ahead of time, you're not very coachable, are you?
I agree, Breck. We're aligned on that. Absolutely. You
Okay.
gotta
But
be able to be able to want to move.
Yep.
But like I said, Bernard, without the knowledge of how to move properly, that's what has old people. That's what has people in assisted living facilities and old age homes be on walkers, because they never knew in their lives how to interrupt their automatic dysfunctional movement patterns, and then they got stuck, with forward head, rounded shoulders, and they get stuck on a walker. And I've gotten people off of walkers too, because it can be done, but it takes more time when somebody's ingrained in their pattern and they're older, but it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely totally agree. I'm totally soaking in what both of you all are saying. And I somehow, when it comes to knowledge, I somehow think, in my opinion, as no expert at all in this case, that knowledge seems to be more important, especially at younger years. It's really about not just the activity. The activity is important, but Tim, you made a great comment, or somebody did, where it eventually fades away, that activity. And I think when it comes to handing out proper knowledge at a specific age, I think as you get older, I think it just induces you to continuously, we turn into adults and we go see a doctor and they tell us, you better get this together. It's that knowledge that pushes us forward and gives it that motivation.
Yeah,
It sticks there.
absolutely.
It sticks there.
Yeah, basically, because I think it's knowledge for some people. I think are also related. It's a knowledge that leads to feeling. If I know, hey, this thing is going to get me off my walker, get me off my thing and have faith, then I've got a feeling behind that says, dang, this is going to be fantastic getting off that walker. That's what keeps you going on that point. And so, Bob, I applaud you on this, getting the people, off the walkers, having done that. One of the areas I focus in that wellness plan management is the elderly. It's retired professional athletes, corporate executives, and the elderly. That 3 segments I focus on, available to others. But one of that is because in that home care world, I saw where so many healthcare professionals and families were giving up on people from 78 to 90 years old, saying we just help them cope. And I felt at that point, have since proven from that point, that if you with the right exercise, more focus on protein to help develop muscles, with the right equipment, those vibrating boards.
I love it.
So with the right diet, with the right exercise, use of things like PEMF, that's a very supportive thing at an activation level to keep the body functioning more. Those people could get improvement and could throw away those walkers, or if not throw away the walker, go back to a cane and be more mobile type thing. But they could make significant improvement and really enjoy life and physically enjoy life well into their golden years on it. Absolutely.
You'd be shocked at what can be accomplished. I did a program with an independent living and assisted living facility combination, and we had about 40 people in the program, and what I could do with hands-on work by releasing those muscles, helping them release those muscles. You take people who are hunched over, and they'd be standing up almost straight after like 10 minutes of releasing all these muscles that are keeping them held over.
Yeah.
So
Right.
People can respond.
Yeah. Once upon a time, I might have been shocked, Bob, because I might have said, hey, I thought that could be done, but it's being done. And I would never be, but having become familiar with your work, it wouldn't shock me on that. And then 2, having seen and helped people do that myself with various types of things, it's amazing. I've had people that had strokes that were 10 years past and had aphasia and things of that nature, gotten them back to be able to function very, very well. People that had neuropathy for years and just were like you've had some neuropathy for years and say there's no hope. Doctors tell them no hope to get away from this, and actually in anywhere from 2 to 6 months, have them really be that neuropathy free and really enjoying things again. Absolutely.
Yeah, people, they can be very resilient as older folks, especially when they have a will to live.
Sure.
When they have a will to live, they can be unstoppable if they're guided in the right way.
That's right.
And you know, I'm so happy that I was able to transition from doing the hands-on direct work to developing online programs where I can teach people over the internet through demonstrations and
Right.
having them watch videos and listen to audio tracks, guided meditation audio tracks.
I do want to say that I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I really do think this is excellent. Around that topic on knowledge and activity, I really do think that it is the youth that should be targeted. And when I say youth, I don't know the age,
Mhm.
but conversation
Yeah.
needs to be created for that
Yeah.
particular type of group. It's like what you said, Tim, when it comes to just, it's a topic.
Mhm.
And I just think the conversation is too medical for those guys, for that specific type of age group. And, obviously they just can't, keep their focus. But if there is, a focus and conversation built around helping them understand how important movement is and activity, I think it'll jump, and it's
Yeah.
extremely important.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that, Bernard.
Wanted to
That's
say
really
that,
valuable.
guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's excellent. Thanks for
Hey,
being
guys,
here.